30 minutes. That was all the time I had left until dinner service was supposed to begin for the most expensive event I had ever catered. The air inside the private estate in Aspen was thick with tension and the smell of expensive perfume mixed with the faint, metallic scent of panic. Outside, the Colorado winter was raging 10 degrees below zero, but inside I was sweating in my chef's whites. My sister, Chantel, stood in the doorway of the kitchen, her designer wedding dress taking up half the space. She wasn't smiling. She looked frantic, her eyes wide and wild. She threw something at my feet. It landed with a wet thud. I looked down. It was a toilet brush. A dirty used toilet brush. "What is this?" I asked, my voice calm despite the pounding in my chest. "The cleaning crew didn't show up," Chantel snapped. "I fired them yesterday to save money, okay? I thought we could handle it ourselves. But now the VIP toilet is clogged and overflowing. It's disgusting. You need to fix it." I stared at her. "You want me to clean a toilet? I'm your executive chef. I'm about to serve $38,000 worth of Wagyu beef." "I don't care about the beef right now," she screamed. "I care about my guests seeing sewage water in the hallway. Just do it, Kendra. Your family. Stop being difficult." My parents, Dennis and Brenda, were standing right behind her. They didn't look shocked. They didn't look embarrassed. They looked impatient. "Just help your sister," my mother said, waving a hand dismissively. "Don't ruin her day over a little mess. You're used to getting your hands dirty." I looked at the brush on the floor. Then I looked at my family. And in that moment something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. Cold, absolute clarity. I bent down and picked up the brush. "Before I tell you exactly how that toilet brush destroyed a $100,000 wedding in less than 20 minutes, drop a comment telling me, what is the most disrespectful thing a family member has ever asked you to do for free?" My name is Sydney and I am 28 years old. 2 weeks before my wedding, I received a call from my venue coordinator. She sounded embarrassed, like she was trying to deliver bad news without actually saying the words. She told me my final deposit had been declined. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone away from my ear, staring at the screen. Declined. That wasn't possible. I had saved $85,000. Every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every corner cut for 6 years. It was all sitting in my high-yield savings account, waiting to pay for the day I started my real life. I logged into my banking app. My thumb hovered over the icon, a small, cold knot forming in my stomach. When the screen loaded, the number 0 stared back at me. $85,000, gone. Under recent activity there was a single transfer. The memo line read simply, "Life-saving treatment Bali." Before I could breathe, before I could scream, a notification popped up on my screen. It was an Instagram post from my sister, Brianna. Selfie. She was reclining in a first-class seat, holding a glass of champagne, looking tanned and tragic. The caption read, "God gives his hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. Off to fight for my life. #Stage 4 survivor." I didn't cry. I didn't call her. I sat down on my floor and realized with terrifying clarity that my money wasn't borrowed. It was stolen. And my sister wasn't dying. She was going on vacation. Before I tell you what I did when I saw that photo, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. I walked into the bathroom and closed the door behind me. The smell hit me instantly, a sharp, foul odor that would have made anyone else gag. But I didn't react. I didn't cover my nose. I simply pulled on a pair of heavy rubber gloves I found under the sink and went to work. For 5 minutes, the only sound in that small tiled room was the sloshing of water and the rhythmic scrubbing of the brush. I was thorough. I was efficient. I cleaned that toilet as if I were scrubbing a burnt pot in my own kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't curse my family under my breath. My mind was completely silent, a blank slate where only one thought existed: malicious compliance. When the water finally drained clear and the porcelain shone, I stripped off the gloves and dropped them into the trash can. I washed my hands at the sink, scrubbing them with soap for a full 20 seconds, watching the suds swirl down the drain. I dried them on a paper towel, checked my reflection in the mirror, not a single hair out of place, and opened the door. My family was still standing in the hallway looking smug. Chantel had a triumphant smirk on her face, the look of someone who had finally put the help in their place. My mother gave me a tight, approving nod. "See," she said. "That wasn't so hard, was it? Now hurry up. Guests are arriving." I didn't answer. I walked past them, my footsteps echoing on the marble floor, and pushed through the swinging doors into the kitchen. My sous chefs were frantically plating the appetizers, 50 tiny spoons of caviar and creme fraiche. The air was hot and smelled of searing meat and reduction sauces. I walked straight to the main wall near the walk-in fridge. There was a large red button behind a plastic safety cover. I lifted the cover and punched the button with the heel of my hand. Thump. The result was immediate. The roar of the ventilation hoods died. The hiss of the gas ranges silenced as the safety valves slammed shut. The sudden quiet was deafening. Every member of my staff froze, looking at me with wide, confused eyes. "Chef?" my sous chef Marco asked, holding a tray of partially torched scallops. "What's happening?" Seal and pack, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in the sudden silence, it carried to every corner of the room. Wrap the proteins. Ice the seafood. Load the truck. We are leaving. Leaving. Marco blinked. But service starts in 20 minutes. Not anymore, I said. Move. The kitchen doors swung open, banging against the wall. Chantal stormed in, her face flushed. Why is it quiet in here? Why isn't the food going out? The first guests are asking for the lobster bisque. She stopped when she saw the staff wrapping plastic over the trays of Wagyu beef. Her eyes bulged. What are you doing? Stop. Uncover that. I stepped between her and my staff. I stood tall, my hands clasped behind my back in the parade rest position I had learned in culinary school. The kitchen is closed, Chantal, I said. What do you mean closed? You can't close it. You have a contract. I do, I agreed. And that contract requires me to adhere to all state health regulations. Specifically, the Colorado Retail Food Establishment rules regarding employee hygiene and disease control. I held up my hands, palms open, displaying them like evidence. I have just handled raw sewage and human waste at the direct order of the event organizer, I said, my voice cutting through the room like a cold wind. By law, the executive chef is now a biohazard. I am a vector for cross-contamination. I cannot touch food, utensils, or food contact surfaces for a minimum of 24 hours. And since I am the only licensed supervisor on this site, if I cannot work, this kitchen cannot operate. Chantal stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. You washed your hands. It doesn't matter, I said. The risk of norovirus and fecal coliform transfer is too high. I will not risk my license or the health of your guests. You ordered me to clean a toilet, Chantal. You just fired your own chef. To understand why I didn't scream, why I didn't fight back until that exact moment, you have to understand where we were. We were miles from civilization, high in the Rocky Mountains, in a private estate rental that cost more per night than most people make in a year. The air outside was thin and freezing, 10 degrees below zero, and the isolation was total. There was no cell service unless you stood by the specific booster in the library, and the nearest town was a 40-minute drive down a treacherous, icy road. I had arrived 48 hours earlier, driving my massive mobile kitchen truck up that winding pass myself. I brought $32,000 worth of inventory with me. A5 Wagyu beef flown in from Japan, live king crabs from Alaska, truffles that cost more per ounce than gold. I had prepped for weeks. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a showcase. Chantal had promised me this would be good exposure, a chance to show my parents that my career choice wasn't a mistake. But the red flag started the moment I parked the truck. Chantal met me at the loading dock, not with a hug or a thank you but with a garment bag. She thrust it at me before I even turned off the engine. What's this? I asked. Your uniform, she said. I don't want you wearing that white chef coat. It looks too official. It distracts from me. I want you to blend in with the rest of the staff. I unzipped the bag. Inside was a gray, shapeless maid's uniform. It was cheap polyester, baggy and ill-fitting. It wasn't professional attire. It was a costume designed to make me invisible. To make me less than. I'm the executive chef, I said, my grip tightening on the bag. I wear whites. It's a safety standard, Chantal. It signifies cleanliness and hierarchy in the kitchen. It signifies that you think you're important, she countered, her voice dripping with that familiar disdain. You're here to serve, Kendra. Not to show off. Wear the dress or go home. I should have left then. I should have turned the truck around and driven back down the mountain. But I didn't. I took the dress. I put it on. Why? Because I had spent 29 years being trained for this moment. It's called the boiling frog effect. You don't realize you're being cooked until the water is already boiling. It started when we were kids. Let Chantal have the last cookie, she's smaller. Give Chantal your doll, she's crying. Help Chantal with her homework, you're the smart one. Over decades, being the bigger person just became code for letting yourself be erased. I had normalized the abuse so deeply that standing in a freezing parking lot holding a maid's dress didn't feel like an outrage. Felt like Tuesday. I thought if I just did this one last big thing, if I just gave her the perfect wedding, maybe they would finally say thank you. Maybe they would finally see me. So I put on the gray dress. I swallowed my pride. I went to work prepping the most exquisite meal of my life, unaware that I was just setting the table for my own humiliation. The humiliation didn't stop with the uniform. It escalated hour by hour like a slow-moving avalanche. By lunchtime on the day of the wedding, the temperature outside had dropped even further, a biting wind whipping snow against the massive windows of the estate. Inside, the great room was warm, the fireplace crackling, the air filled with the scent of pine and expensive candles. My family, Dennis, Brenda, and Chantal, sat around the long oak dining table, laughing and eating the lobster bisque I had prepared as a pre-ceremony lunch. It was a simple meal for me to make, but rich and warming. I walked out of the kitchen, carrying a small plate with a ham sandwich I'd made from staff provisions. I intended to sit at the far end of the table just for 10 minutes, to get off my feet before the dinner rush began. As I pulled out a chair, my mother's hand shot out, stopping me. "Kendra, honey, no," Brenda said, her voice soft but firm, "the way you talk to a dog that's jumped on the sofa. Not in here." I froze, the plate hovering over the wood. "What? You smell like cooking," she said, wrinkling her nose delicately. "Like grease and onions. We have guests arriving soon to say hello. We can't have the room smelling like a diner." "I smell like lobster bisque," I said. "The same bisque you're eating." "It's just not appropriate," my father, Dennis, chimed in, not even looking up from his bowl. "Staff eat in the back. You know that." "I'm your daughter," I whispered. "Today you're the help," Chantal said, tearing a piece of crusty bread. "Go eat on the loading dock. The view is nice." The loading dock. It wasn't an enclosed porch. It was a concrete slab outside the service entrance. There were no heaters. I didn't argue. I couldn't. The boiling frog effect was in full swing. I was so conditioned to obey that my body moved before my brain could protest. I walked out the back door. The cold hit me like a physical blow, instantly freezing the moisture in my nose. I sat on a crate, shivering in my thin polyester maid's dress, eating a cold sandwich while snow gathered on my eyelashes. Through the window I could see them laughing, warm and golden in the firelight. But the final straw, the moment the frog finally tried to jump, came 2 hours later. I was back in the kitchen prepping the champagne service. A crate of vintage Dom Perignon had a stuck lid. The wood was warped and swollen from the altitude. Chantal breezed in, already half drunk on mimosas, looking for a bottle to pop for a photo op. "It's stuck," I told her. "I need to find the pry bar." "We don't have time for that," she snapped. She scanned the counter and her eyes landed on my knife roll. It was open. Lying there was my jito, a hand-forged Japanese chef's knife. It was my most prized possession, a gift I had bought myself after my first year as an executive chef. It cost $2,000. The steel was harder than diamond but brittle if misused. It was an extension of my arm. "Don't," I said, stepping forward. "Chantal, do not touch that." She grabbed the handle. Before I could reach her, she jammed the delicate razor-thin tip of the blade into the wood of the crate and twisted. The sound was sickeningly loud, like a bone breaking. The tip of the knife, about an inch of master-crafted steel, flew across the room. Chantal held the handle, looking at the jagged, ruined edge. I stopped breathing. That knife was my career. It was the only thing in my life that was purely mine, respected and cared for. Chantal tossed the broken knife onto the stainless steel table. It clattered, hollow and dead. "Oops," she shrugged. "Cheap metal. It's just a knife, Kendra. I'll buy you a new one at Walmart. Now open the crate." She laughed. In that moment the love I had for my family didn't crack. It died. I looked at the snapped blade and understood they would break everything I was until nothing remained but something they could use. 2 hours later, when she threw a toilet brush at me, I wasn't cleaning to help her. I was cleaning to end her. My father blocked the exit as my team rolled the food out. "Nobody's leaving," he roared. "I'll ruin you." I stepped forward and pulled the contract from my pocket. "I'm not walking out," I said calmly. "I'm enforcing it." I read Clause 4.2 aloud, "Health violations void service while retaining payment," then cited state law prohibiting food prep after exposure to sewage. "You ordered me to clean it," I said to Chantal. "You can't have a maid and a chef in the same body." Dennis had no answer. I told my team to load up. As they did, I spotted an invoice in the trash. A $30,000 helicopter charter, paid yesterday from the catering budget. She had stolen my money for a TikTok stunt. When I confronted her, the fear finally showed. "I was going to pay you back," she pleaded. "You're rich." "It wasn't yours," I said. "And I don't let thieves rob me. Not even family." I locked the truck. Outside, guests were being seated for a feast that no longer existed. Chantal chased the truck through the snow, screaming, offering jewelry, begging. "I have standards," I told her through the cracked window. My father shouted that I was dead to them. "That's the plan," I replied. I drove away and delivered the untouched food to a community shelter instead. Later I learned the wedding collapsed. The groom saw the helicopter invoice and annulled the marriage the next day. In the shelter parking lot, I held the broken knife in my hand. It wasn't just a tool. It was the last tether to the belief that if I were perfect enough they would love me. I threw it away. I drove off alone, exhausted but free. I left them hungry. For the first time in my life I wasn't starving for their approval.